Hey everyone, welcome in to Pattern Still Stories. I'm your host Klaus, and today we're going to be talking about the new KONA BLUE documents that were released by AARO yesterday. With me today, as always, is my co-host Garrett. How's it going, man?
Great, dude. I had a really good trip to New York this week.
Yeah, that was fun. We finally met for the first time in real life. I think people are kind of freaked out when they hear that. At least some of them were on social media when I was like, yeah, I'm meeting up with Garrett for the first time. Everyone's like, you sound like you've been friends forever. And yeah, it kind of does sound like we are talking in the same room a lot of the time. But yeah, man, it was really fun. We got some Jersey diner food and just hung out and shot the shit. It was like we kind of knew each other forever. At least I felt that way.
I've talked to you for so long now. I don't know. I've never really had a friendship online. You know what I'm saying? Like I used to laugh at the idea of something like that. Just the way the world is right now, and just especially after everyone had to be inside for a year, I'm much more used to like Zooming and talking to people and talking to family. Honestly, dude, I just have so much fun doing this show. It's like one of my favorite parts of my day. So it was my pleasure. I had a great time.
Yeah, it was rad. But yeah, fresh off that, there was a release yesterday that we're going to get into. It was the KONA BLUE Special Access Program that was mentioned, I think, in the AARO report, the one that was a nightmare and basically just shat all over everything. There is some sort of spin that they're trying to do with this. I think they went through the whole history of OSAP and, the Bigelow kind of group who was really into studying UFOs and other things around that, different paranormal phenomena. Eric Davis, the NIDS crew, kind of up into OSAP. And then it turns out that this KONA BLUE program appears to be an extension of OSAP after the program got shut down. They tried to go over to DHS, Department of Homeland Security, and I think it was Harry Reid, one of his letters was also within these documents, trying to get them to support some sort of UFO program. Well, it sounds like a lot more than a UFO program. We'll get into that. So my theory is that in the AARO report, they tried so hard to discredit anyone and everyone who was in Bigelow's orbit, like all the NIDS guys, up to OSAP, ATIP. Yeah, essentially it's the whole circular reporting, same small crowd of UFO enthusiasts that are always pushing this stuff. That was what a big chunk of the AARO report was. It was discrediting, people like Lou Elizondo. Yeah, all those guys. Colm Keller, Eric Davis, Hal Puthoff, Vallée even. Pretty much anyone who was involved in UFOs up to that point. So releasing this, I think now I think they tried to preempt the release of this with the AARO report by shitting on them first and then releasing this as if, it's all a joke. But the thing is, this whole program and the whole saga of how they went about trying to get it put together and get it funded and get it going under DHS, that was actually explained in a whole chapter in Skinwalkers at the Pentagon that I'll read from in a bit. But what's your take on why they released this and, just before we get into what's actually in it?
The thing with this set of documents is that if you take just a quick glance at it, you see a lot of really recognizable phrases and things that people get excited over, and they go like, oh man, well, this is now true or this is real. And like, that's not necessarily what something means when it shows up in a document. It could very well just be like a collection of testimony from different people that's compiled and it looks a certain way. And sometimes things, even though they're collected, aren't taken as seriously as you'd expect them to be, even though they're written in a very serious sounding way. So with this one, I saw a lot of headlines first, and I saw a lot of people's reactions first. As I expected, the people that don't read anything got the most excited about them. And that's just something in general. I feel like with this topic, you can notice if you pay attention to the media attention that it gets, that there are deliberate efforts of spin. And I consider this set one of those attempts. Now, I'm not saying that it was created with that attempt. I'm saying that like the reason we're seeing it as a populace is because it's seen as something that they can spin a particular way and it's going to be advantageous in the long run. Now, that doesn't mean that like the research that Bigelow did isn't worthwhile, or that's not what I'm saying. I think that the research Bigelow did was very worthwhile. And I think that the investigation David Grush was doing into these programs that are hidden from congressional oversight, I think all of these things have a lot of merit and should be taken very seriously. But I think the spin comes in is to where people bring up and have questions about maybe something they saw in this set of KONA Blue documents, and people laugh and snicker and they go like, oh, well, that's something that we don't take seriously. And they think they're going to conflate that and everything that's in this set of documents with something that, you know what I mean? Like, I think that it's just going to be used as some straw man as a reason that why we shouldn't look into topics like exploring if we have other forms of life, to observe what UFOs are, what they may be doing to our nuclear sites, all of these things that they're very dismissive of. All of the sudden, there's groups of people saying that there's data out there that we should be paying close attention to. And then there's other groups of people that are just saying that this is a circular reporting group of desperate people. Don't listen to them. Don't listen to them. Yet the people telling us don't listen to them, they have a history of obfuscation on this subject. Anybody can agree that whatever the story was that they tell us happened in Roswell from the Department of Defense since its inception was a story that seemed to not be 100% what it was. And I think even military people, high-ranking military people have gone on the record saying that at the very least. What they're telling us is a cover story. Now, if that's happening, I suppose that's okay. But at a certain point in time, as a public, you have to understand that like certain things, you're not going to get a straight answer unless you pry it from them. Things like the Kennedy assassination, which people really wanted uncovered and investigated. Well, our past two presidents, not two presidents, our past presidents since this has happened, haven't released all the information to the public. We still have a very patched together version. I don't know if you'd even want to include this as a tangent, but have you heard about the Lloyd Jowers trial? Have you heard of this before? Where the family of Martin Luther King Jr. sued and said that there was like a wrongful death and they won. I don't even know. I don't know enough about this to fucking like talk about it, but yeah. I heard John Keel talking about it and I was like, fuck, yo. They were saying that like law enforcement had a hand in that shit. It just made you think like, oh, wow, there's a lot to these things that people make a lot of assumptions about. The point I'm making with Roswell and how there seems to be some role of obfuscating certain things about UFOs. I know that that's something that's frustrating, but at the same time, just pay attention to the things they're obfuscating and pay attention to the things that they're saying. Like David Grush compared the classification on this project to the Manhattan Project. That's one of the most secret, if not the most secret project that this country knows about. So if there's things more secret than that, you can bet that there's going to be all sorts of attempts to spin it in a certain direction. But I got to be honest, the only thing that I'm seeing right now that I'm really concerned about, I don't even know if I want to take this in this direction, but I'm seeing attempts lately at people that you'll never hear of, you'll never know their name. It's just like random people, and they're trying to like build groups and they're trying to make little networks where they can give cryptocurrency to people. I'm just seeing an unbelievable amount of fake accounts popping up that are bringing a lot of obfuscation towards this topic. So specifically, as of the stuff I'm hearing lately, I know that there's attempts to sue people. It's not people that like died a long time ago. It's people that are like real human beings that have come forward and tried to like come forward in a really responsible way, in my opinion, like Lou Elizondo. And in my opinion, the way I see it is that their jobs were classified to a point where if they do talk about what they worked on in its entirety, they would go to jail. And it really makes me sick to see that there's people and efforts to try to discredit people that aren't given an opportunity to fully defend themselves and tell the truth. The things they're accusing of is they're not telling us that little green men are walking around our streets, and they're not telling us that the flying saucers are going to come pick us up and save us. They're not telling us any of that bullshit. They're saying that there's things that we don't understand, and there's programs going on recovering exotic technology, and there's some sort of campaign to disinform the American people. I don't know. Maybe not.
No, I get you. I'm one of the ones who was very excited about this initially. I skimmed it, right? And I was making commentary on it. And then Joe Murgia comes in. It's no, this doesn't mean it's real. But I'm like, whatever. It's a weird thing where, in my opinion, this is an important thing to come to light, regardless of what it's used for, spin-wise. This is an extension or an extrapolation of OSAP. So if we're talking about what's going on in OSAP, I'm very interested in that. So I'm very interested in this as well. But I didn't remember that this was actually addressed. I mean, not the stuff that was actually in the program, but how this program came to be and then was terminated. I forgot that was addressed in Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. So I went back and read it, and I think that's pretty important context to provide people. So I think I'm going to read that if that's cool.
Yeah, dude. That's Colm Kelleher's book, right?
Yeah, Colm Kelleher,
and George Knapp.
And Lakatsky. Yeah, the main guy at OSAP, who is kind of a dick, I guess. I don't know. He was shitting on David Grush, I guess. So this is a chapter. It's very short, and it's called the Department of Homeland Security, which is where this program was supposed to be under. And this is the story of how they brought it to them and, what happened ultimately. Kelleher, Pudoff, Lakatsky, and Black had just entered the cavernous lobby of the Department of Homeland Security in downtown Washington, D.C., when Kelleher spotted Jim Bell in the hallway beyond the security control. As Lakatsky and the Bass trio approached the security checkpoint, Bell spotted them and walked quickly over to speed up their sign-in process. Bigelow, Lakatsky, and Kelleher had met Bell a couple of months earlier at the Hyatt Regency Washington on Capitol Hill, when during dessert he had confided some war stories about his tours in Mogadishu, Somalia. With his jet black hair and sallow skin, Bell displayed an aggressively cool demeanor. But today Kelleher could see the beads of sweat on Bell's forehead. Dressed in his crisp black suit, Bell led them through the tortuous corridors of the DHS and into the skip. They were there to meet with Dr. Tara O'Toole, the Undersecretary for Science and Technology at DHS. For many years, O'Toole had been the director for the Center of Biosecurity at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. Kelleher and Black were also familiar with her academic publications in the biodefense field, including the response to biological attacks involving anthrax, smallpox, and the plague. Bell had set up the meeting to brief Secretary O'Toole on the top-level BASS program mission goals. Lakatsky, Kelleher, Pudoff, and Black were there to answer any technical questions before exploring any areas of commonality that might lead to a BASS-like program under the auspices of the Science and Technology umbrella at DHS. Specifically, the briefing would focus on the commonality of sensor technology applied to both a BASS-like program and a collaborative science and technology program under the roof of the DHS. A secondary goal of the meeting was to explore how the advanced technology that lay at the heart of the BASS program could be developed within DHS, thus potentially making this briefing a, quote, win-win. When Tara O'Toole and her entourage swept into the room, pleasantries and small talk were in short supply. Turning to Jim Bell, she asked, "Why are we here?" When Bell began the briefing with a jargon-laden summary of the proposed program, O'Toole quickly interrupted him and asked why the three BASS scientists were there. At that point, Kelleher, Pudoff, Lakatsky, and Black took over the briefing. It was obvious the secretary wanted technical details. The three experts immediately touted the BASS achievements that focused on the production of 38 advanced technology papers, followed by the scientific and technology-driven investigations of the USS Nimitz Tic Tac episode. The undersecretary punctuated the briefing with quick, decisive questions. Then Kelleher quickly briefed her on the sensor-driven strategies utilized on Skinwalker Ranch. Black and Kelleher then focused the rest of the discussion with Dr. O'Toole on some of the medical investigations that Bass had initiated. O'Toole listened with great interest as Black and Kelleher recounted the 2005 case of the Ron Becker encounter with blue orbs that had culminated in a host of biological and medical issues. O'Toole became more and more intrigued as time went on. At the end of the meeting, which had extended beyond the scheduled 30 minutes into beyond an hour, O'Toole exited the skiff with the promise to continue the discussions on bringing a Bass-like program under the roof of DHS. Following the meeting with the Undersecretary, the prospect of a program within DHS seemed promising. At that point, the team was introduced to a very high-level official at DHS named Sasha Mover, who was the driver of much of the relatively new DHS program initiatives. Mover had a fascinating story to tell the group. He had been born and raised in a rural area of Kentucky, and he told Kelleher that many of these small rural communities in Kentucky are still not on the electrical grid, partly because of a lack of political will, and partly because the economics of electrification simply do not add up in the minds of many commercial power utilities that serve these small communities. In 2008, Mover went back to where he grew up in a Kentucky holler to meet with his family members and renew some old acquaintances that he had not enjoyed for many years. His family members told him that a year previously, one night during an outdoor gathering, a low-flying, large, brightly lit UFO had suddenly appeared over a nearby hill. Everyone watched in disbelief. The object was huge, multicolored, and silent. It remained in the vicinity for several minutes before shooting off at an impossible velocity. No one had ever seen anything like this before, and the incident was discussed endlessly for the rest of the evening. By the end of the night, a lot of the neighbors had also heard about the amazing spectacle in the sky, and the inhabitants went to bed very late, still buzzing about the remarkable incident. Mover then told Kelleher that about 24 hours later, 3 large black SUVs pulled up in the holler. Out of the black SUVs stepped several black-suited individuals wearing dark glasses. They loudly and urgently called for all the locals to gather together. Within about 30 minutes, all of the local holler inhabitants had gathered around the black SUVs, and the leader of the, quote, Men in Black began asking the locals about what they had seen in the sky. Slowly, after a lot of hesitation, some of the crowd gave a brief description of the spectacular UFO that they had seen the previous night. The leader then climbed on top of his vehicle, and in front of the assembled holler inhabitants told them, "You would be well advised not to talk about this incident in the future." Silence reigned over the crowd. Then loudly, he added, "It will be in your interest not to speak about this incident again." According to Mover's family members who were present at the meeting, his tone was threatening. The message was unmistakable. An intimidating silence seemed to hover over the assembled crowd. Just as suddenly as they had arrived, 3 black SUVs departed the holler at high speed. Then oddly, within 3 months without warning, a series of electrical transformers were erected in the Kentucky holler. And shortly thereafter, for the first time in their history, the holler residents were fully electrified. The technology was state-of-the-art, and the puzzled holler inhabitants slowly began to suspect that there might be a link between the man's threat, the fact that the holler denizens kept silent about the UFO incident, and the unexpected appearance of the high-tech electrification unit in their small community. Mover told Kelleher that this incident was worth looking into. He found the incident sufficiently intriguing that it had provoked a more open-minded attitude towards strange things, and he was therefore willing to go the extra mile in accommodating the often outlandish requests from Bass. Shortly after the successful meeting with O'Toole at DHS, Sasha Mover and Jim Bell began knocking on doors beyond DHS to connect with the keepers of the secrets and at least 2 other agencies. In these meetings, which took place from June to July 2011, Sasha, Jim, and colleagues were treated rudely and harshly. Bell and Mover were repeatedly told no and hell no. This left Mover and Bell convinced that the advanced technology was sequestered under government supervision at an aerospace contractor's facilities. As a result, the DHS officials became very hesitant and even fearful of moving forward. Perhaps Mover and Bell only belatedly realized the unique, game-changing, and earth-shattering nature of the biggest secret ever kept by the United States. The vast implications of the secret may simply have paralyzed them. It's possible that because DHS was a new kid in town, and low on the traditional pecking order among long-established intelligence agencies, that their requests were viewed as not worthy of serious consideration. After all, with the passage of the Homeland Security Act by Congress in November 2002, in response to a devastatingly poor coordination between intelligence and law enforcement organizations. Seen in the wake of the September 2001 attacks, the Department of Homeland Security formally came into being as a standalone cabinet-level department to further coordinate and unify national homeland security efforts, opening its doors on March 1st, 2003. Therefore, when Bell and Mover began knocking on doors to obtain additional evidence on sequestered advanced technology, the rudeness and hostility shown to them was not just an attempt to protect the greatest secret of all, but a marking of the territory for a young organization less than 10 years old that dared to request access to something that had been successfully buried within the bowels of the U.S. government for more than 60 years. Nevertheless, Bell, Mover, and colleagues emerged from the June 2011 interagency meetings newly convinced that sequestered advanced technology was real and that they had a tiger by the tail in attempting to bring a new BASS-like program under the DHS umbrella. From July to December 2011, the Science and Technology Group at DHS worked with BASS to firm up the details of the proposed new BASS-like organization that might be integrated into S&T. Multiple proposals were submitted, edited, discussed, and fine-tuned, with Jim Lakatsky acting as the intermediary with DHS. The BASS Group were told that O'Toole was a positive proponent of this initiative, and by late 2011, the initiative had reached a point where a meeting of the leadership was to take place. The primary decision at DHS regarding the integration of the BASS-like program into DHS was Deputy Secretary Jane Hull-Lute, who was second in command at the department. Lute has since retired from DHS. In addition to Lute, there were three other main decision-makers in upper DHS management. There were the Undersecretary of Management and the DHS General Counsel. A third very important participant in the decision-making process was then Undersecretary for Intelligence and Analysis, Phyllis Green, who had a reputation as a consummate intelligence professional and a, quote, no-nonsense senior decision-maker at DHS. In November 2011, Jane Hull-Lute was convinced that the proposed BASS-like program, quote, was a go, but Phyllis Green was skeptical of the data that had been obtained by BASS, and in particular, she was concerned that the controversial BASS subject matter, if it were ever made public, would bring disrepute to the DHS as a fledgling organization trying to be taken seriously by other government departments. Ultimately, Undersecretary Phyllis Green proved to be a powerful, logical voice in the small select group of DHS leadership, and the consensus decision emerged not to proceed with the BASS-like program at DHS. BASS was seen as too fringe. In the end, it may have turned out for the best. Undersecretary Phyllis Green's vociferous insistence on not incorporating the BASS program into DHS may have been the correct one. I don't know what that means.
I think that I actually read that today, and I think that that's really pertinent to what we're talking about right now.
That's everything. I mean, that puts everything into context. It's a totally reasonable situation for this whole thing and why they wouldn't have gone forward with it. It's always easy to go to their being intentionally deceitful, but this in itself sort of sounded like just, bureaucratic skepticism, I guess.
I want to explain this as good as I can. A big part of what people think is being covered up. Just based on what I've heard from people and read in these books, these special access programs are on a whole other level of secrecy. And that's something I've seen try to be spun a few different ways. Like I've seen people online saying like, oh, special access programs, no big deal. There's a bunch of special access programs. And that is true. But there's also a huge variety of special access programs where it's unfathomable how secret it is. The point I'm trying to make is I wanted to explain two things and why things are secret and how the military and the intelligence agencies navigate and private companies navigate keeping these secrets. So I wanted to ask you first if you've heard of this Pentacle memorandum. So remember the Blue Book case that I posted the other day on Twitter? And it was from October 2nd, 1951, Columbus, Ohio, 6:00 p.m. Witness, Battelle Memorial Institute graduate physicist Howard Cross. One bright oval with a clipped tail flew straight and level, fading into the distance after 1 minute. This is a case that was in Project Blue Book. And in Forbidden Science Volume 3, Jacques Vallée writes about this document called the Pentacle Memorandum. And he says the Pentacle Memorandum was the code word Fred Beckman, Alan Hynek, and I used for this classified Battelle document I had discovered in Dr. Hynek's copy of the Blue Book Project files. I had given Dr. Hynek the document when I left the U.S. in 1967, as described in Volume 1 of Forbidden Science. He never revealed its existence. This is what the Pentacle Memorandum says. It's from a guy named Dr. Howard Cross, or H.C. Cross, I should say, to Mr. Miles Gall at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. It says, "Attention, Captain Edward J. Rappelt. Dear Mr. Gall, this letter concerns a preliminary recommendation to ATIC on future methods of handling the problem of unidentified aerial objects. This recommendation is based on our experience to date in analyzing several thousands of reports on this subject. We regard the recommendation as preliminary because our analysis is not yet complete and we are not able to document it where we feel it should be supported by facts from the analysis. We are making this recommendation prematurely because of a CIA-sponsored meeting of a scientific panel meeting in Washington, D.C., January 14th, 15th, and 16th, 1953, to consider the problem of, quote, flying saucers. The CIA-sponsored meeting is being held subsequent to a meeting of CIA, ATIC, and our representatives held at ATIC on December 12th, 1952. At the December 12th meeting, our representatives strongly recommended that a scientific panel not be set up until the results of our analysis of the sighting reports collected by ATIC were available. Since a meeting of the panel is now definitely scheduled, we feel that agreement between Project Stork and ATIC should be reached as to what can and what cannot be discussed at the meeting in Washington on January 14th to 16th concerning our preliminary recommendation to ATIC. Experience to date on our study of unidentified flying objects shows that there is a distinct lack of reliable data with which to work. Even the best documented reports are frequently lacking in critical information that makes it impossible to arrive at a possible identification, i.e., even in a well-documented report, there is always an element of doubt about the data, either because the observer had no means of getting the required data or was not prepared to utilize the means at his disposal. Therefore, we recommend that a controlled experiment be set up by which reliable physical data can be obtained. A tentative preliminary plan by which the experiment could be designed and carried out is discussed in the following paragraphs. Based on our experience so far, it is expected that certain conclusions will be reached as a result of our analysis, which will make obvious the need for an effort to obtain reliable data from competent observers using the necessary equipment. Until more reliable data are available, no positive answers to the problem will be possible. We expect that our analysis will show that certain areas in the United States have had an abnormally high number of reported incidents of unidentified flying objects. Assuming that, from our analysis, several definite areas productive of reports can be selected, we recommend that one or two of these areas be set up as experimental areas. This area or areas should have observation posts with complete visual skywatch, with radar and photographic coverage, plus all other instruments necessary or helpful in obtaining positive and reliable data on everything in the air over the area. A very complete record of the weather should also be kept during the time of the experiment. Coverage should be so complete that any object in the air could be tracked, and information as to its altitude, velocity, size, shape, color, time of day, etc. could be recorded. All balloon releases or known balloon paths, aircraft flights, and flights of rockets in the test area should be known to those in charge of the experiment. Many different types of aerial activity should be secretly and purposefully scheduled within the area. We recognize that this proposed experiment would amount to a large-scale military maneuver or operation, and that it would require extensive preparation and fine coordination, plus maximum security. Although it would be a major operation and expensive, there are many extra benefits to be derived besides the data on unidentified aerial objects. Just how could the problem of these unidentified objects be solved? from this test area during the time of the experiment, it can be assumed that there would be a steady flow of reports from ordinary civilian observers in addition to those by military or other official observers. It should be possible by such a controlled experiment to prove the identity of all objects reported or to determine positively that there were objects present of unknown identity. Any hoaxes under a setup such as this could almost certainly be exposed, perhaps not publicly, but at least to the military. In addition, by having resulting data from the controlled experiment, reports for the last 5 years could be reevaluated in the light of similar but positive information. This should make possible reasonably certain conclusions concerning the importance of the problem of, quote, flying saucers. Results of an experiment such as described could assist the Air Force to determine how much attention to pay to future situations when, in the future, the Air Force should be able to make positive statements reassuring to the public and to the effect that everything is well under control. Very truly yours, H.C. Cross.
That's the Pentacle Memorandum?
Yes, but that brings me to Jacques Vallée's Forbidden Science 5, where he mentions it, and he mentions special access programs in the BASS program and having issues with getting clear communication with the Air Force. And there's 2 separate parts of Forbidden Science 5 I want to bring up with knowledge that this Pentacle Memorandum exists. And I want to reiterate who Howard Cross is for people. So Howard Cross was a scientist for Battelle Memorial Institute. Everybody, I'm sure, that knows anything about like military companies knows that Battelle is a very serious company. And if you Google Howard Cross, for instance, it's a nasa.gov link, Office of Naval Research and NACI Metallurgical Investigation of a large forged disc of inconel X alloy. And basically, Howard Cross, my understanding is that him and his laboratory at Battelle, they could give an analysis at any sort of metal you could bring them.
Yeah, they're the experts on metallurgy.
My understanding is they are on the cutting edge of military technology when it comes to metal. And it's not like Howard Cross is just some guy. So this is one part of Forbidden Science 5. It says Hummingbird, Thursday, the 13th of November, 2003. Brad Sparks sends me a summary of his research. Quote, Dr. Howard Cross, your pentacle witnessed a daylight disk officially listed as a Blue Book unknown. Among Rappelt's 63 best cases he kept on top of his desk, none of which were given to the CIA or the Robertson panel. This sighting was withheld along with all the best unknowns, end quote. He adds, quote, Hynek may have known of Cross's sighting because he represented Battelle to Blue Book and the CIA Robertson panel, but maybe that was kept from Hynek too. Quote, years of complaints that the Air Force was not properly analyzing these reports fell on deaf ears because of a willful, secret policy decision to ignore them. UFO intelligence had focused on instrument data instead of, quote, worthless civilian sightings. So you're quite right that it looks like an underground branch had a visible counterpart, but it did not go underground. It was always underground. Quote, it had been run by General Samford's deputy, General Garland, since December 1951. General Garland started a highly classified black project on March 26, 1952, to track UFOs with sensors. Brad believes the Air Force told the CIA it emphasized instrumentation, but it said nothing about a black project or about a radical change to high-tech intelligence methodology, nothing about the most sensitive collection systems being developed. CIA had no authority, then or now, to insist on Air Force disclosure. Quote, Harry Wu, the Navy analyst of the Tremonton film, told me in 1975 how upset he was that panel members were picking on him and how appreciative he was that Hynek came to his vocal defense. Does that sound familiar? Oh, they're picking on me. So, and then later on in the book, it says Hummingbird, 29th of November, 2009. I haven't spent much time on the BASS project in the last few weeks, but my interest was revived today. Colm Kelleher, home for Thanksgiving, met me for coffee on Union Street. He said the ranch remains a focus of activity. All 6 sponsor personnel have had experiences there. They're fascinated by the issue of detection and stealthy penetration such observations represent. Yet in spite of our clearances, neither the Air Force nor others will talk to us until an SAP is set up. Wasn't that funny?
Yeah, dude. That's wild.
So for those that are like trying to piece this together, Howard Cross is a very serious scientist. And he's a serious scientist that is saying that we are, in fact, seeing things in the sky and we need to commit our best equipment towards studying them. And it seems like these studies have been taking place in a very secret way for a very long time, and that they exist in special access programs. And they will do everything they can to make it seem like that is not the case. But I can assure you, the evidence suggests that these things are in places that like it's very difficult to dig out information from. There's so many parts of this that are like could be considered unethical, or the problem is I don't know the entirety of why it's so important to keep them secret. Like I really don't know if there is a clear reason why. I really don't know the reason because I don't have enough facts, I feel like, to make a determination.
Yeah, and then people fill in the blanks. Like, what do you make of all this stuff? What could it possibly be? It's more than just, foreign drones. We see foreign drones in war zones all the time. Russia has been in a war for years now with Ukraine. I think it's been years. Feels like it. Why would they not use their best? What would they be holding back at this point? It's obviously not them. It doesn't make any sense why they wouldn't, like Putin's nuts, Z's nuts, like they would, Z's nuts. But yeah, man, they wouldn't just be sitting there with their thumbs up their ass like this, flying these little shit drones over Taiwan just to intimidate people. These objects, whatever they are, if they're craft, they're not ours. They're not China's or Russia's. It's just the geopolitical situation right now. They would have had to have used this kind of technology if they had it by now. Maybe a few years ago, I would understand if they hadn't. But the war in Ukraine and the tensions in Taiwan, to me, that is no longer a reasonable explanation, is to cover up what we know about our adversaries' technology, because they fucking have used it already, in my opinion. It would make sense to me if something is happening along the lines of what Tom says about an extra nation state, or, the breakaway civilization idea, where there's some sort of technologically advanced non-governmental entity somewhere on the planet doing this stuff, but just doesn't make fucking sense.
There's a lot of shit going on in the world that, like, I hate using that as a cop-out. Like, yeah, man, there's a lot of crazy stuff. But I think it's something that's it's really hard to put your finger on. You don't know if maybe the US possesses some technological breakthrough and that they're making stories to not have to address that to other countries or not have to show their cards. I feel like that is totally possible. But even still,
why are they flying it over these fucking towns?
Yeah, there's a whole
doesn't make sense.
Giant part of that you almost have 5 more questions when you like have an answer like that. For the Air Force to play along, it seems like they need that special access program status. Otherwise, they don't want anything to do with it because now it can be FOIA'd and now it's available to the public.
That makes a lot of sense to me. They probably also want to be able to use whatever resources they can without any sort of blockage that has to do with classification. Like, they don't want to be like, oh, this needs this. Oh, we can't use that because then we'd have to classify it down the road. They'd rather just have freedom to do everything they want at once rather than piecemeal declassify shit.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. I think this might be worth reading out of Forbidden Science too. This is about like these hidden power structures, and this is a journal entry from Vallée in Forbidden Science 5.
Oh, I love this one. I know what you're reading. Yeah,
it says, Hummingbird, Tuesday, 22nd September 2009, autumn equinox. I've received a remarkable letter from a senior intelligence analyst in Reston. He has become, quote, a student of hidden power structures in the world, adding, quote, I've learned that at least for the period of time from the 1920s through World War II, there was an immensely powerful network of industrial interests with its center of gravity in Germany. This network was not only instrumental in bringing Hitler to power, but it was simultaneously capable of wielding considerable influence over the governments of the US, Great Britain, France, the Netherlands, and elsewhere. He sends me a disc with the text of a book entitled All Honorable Men by James Stuart Martin, who exposed people who helped the Nazi. The letter adds, quote, "It becomes conceivable that a behind-the-scenes power structure could manipulate governments on matters of great importance. Whether or not this is the case with ufology as a vector is speculation." But he writes that he first became interested when he heard privately from a trusted pilot of military reconnaissance aircraft who had observed a large UFO in the early 1980s. Quote, "He and his crewmates had captured 20 minutes of photographic, video, and radio frequency data on the UFO, which flew in close formation in broad daylight. A few hours after they landed, they were debriefed by an anonymous, plainclothes team who confiscated all their evidence. Prior to hearing this story, he insists, he had been an arch skeptic, but what followed took the enigma to an even higher level. Quote, the debriefing team ignored all rules of classified material accountability when confiscating the mission materials. The mission had been an operational signal intelligence mission, and all photos and other data were classified top secret / sensitive compartmented information, which is TSSCI, subject to two-person integrity regulations. Yet the debriefing team signed for nothing. They simply put the tapes and film in a pouch and just walked off. There's nothing on paper regarding these materials. Nothing to file a FOIA request, which is Freedom of Information Act. My correspondent is a defense analyst for the federal government who spent half his career working with special access programs. He's shocked by this situation. Quote, in all my experience, the higher the classification, the stricter the adherence to the rules of material handling, and the more dire the consequences of violating security regulations. So I was extremely baffled by this case. A behind-the-scenes power structure exists which is able to manipulate the CIA, NSA, Air Force OSI, or whoever grabbed the data. Then perhaps this power structure is able to break all the rules and get away with it. End quote. So I think there is shades of that going on right now.
That's why I'm suspicious of the whole denial of this program. In Skinwalkers, they do say it's they just didn't think it was worth it because they didn't want to give them SAP status. But then you have, what you just read, and then you have the Wilson Davis notes are very clearly, it's the same group of people, Special Access Program Oversight Committee, that's blocking the head of the DIA, Admiral Wilson, from learning anything about these programs and just shutting them out, even though he should have access to them, or at least the existence of them. It's that kind of stuff that is really sketchy. It makes me question, especially with that Dr. O'Toole going to bat for this after being briefed by Kelleher. She spoke on his level about that kind of stuff, the medical effects of these UFO encounters and whatever that entails, the hitchhiker effect and that kind of thing. So I was reading her biography, Dr. O'Toole. Again, she was the Undersecretary for Science and Technology for DHS. Essentially said she was praised for taking over the DHS at a time when their funding was cut. O'Toole was, I guess, very frugal with the money, and the fact that she would go to bat for this program, I think, says a lot about how important it was. And to her, she understood it deeply, I think, more than people who denied it. Why would she push this and advocate for KONA Blue if she didn't think it was worth the money, the taxpayer money that's being spent, especially when she navigated DHS through these budget cuts?
If you were someone pulling strings, think about the amount of pressure it puts on people in these really serious positions.
Exactly. Yeah.
To say publicly that you're committing money towards these topics. I'm very passionate about researching this, and I feel the discomfort of having to commit things to something we don't even know the proper method to study because of how little transparency we have with our scientists and with these classified research programs. There could be a whole other kingdom of our animal kingdom there could be entire other areas of science that we're going to have to like commit tons of hours, tons of years, and we're still going to only be scratching the surface.
What does this have to do with microbiology? It has to do something, right? With microbiology, you got Lou Elizondo, Keller, fucking Kit Green, O'Toole, Gary Nolan, obviously. Like there is something to that at the micro scale, life at the micro scale. Maybe it's just DNA. I don't know. Lou tells that story about, I forget who the scientist was that discovered microbes, and he like flipped the fuck out. He tells a story about him screaming like little beasties or something like that. And that's always kind of stuck in my mind, especially when I tied it to Lou being a microbiologist and having a degree in that. Him saying that these little microbes were paranormal until they were normal within the context of that story. And now we just live with microbes everywhere. But when you see it for the first time under a microscope, you flip the fuck out because you're like, what is all this life doing at such a small scale when you have no idea it's there?
You want to hear a weird one I heard from E.O. Wilson? He said that there are 10 million species on our Earth, or at least that's what scientists suspect, is 10 million species. He says science only discovered 2 million of them.
Yeah.
So think about that giant gap of knowledge. And there could be even more as we get to the microscopic and the macroscopic of like, because I think people often forget that like even we ourselves are colonies, massive groups of individual living organisms. I don't know. Someone 100 years would have really had a lot of trouble with that.
Like when you're thinking about non-human intelligence, like say the Earth is intelligent, we just don't know it because we're so small compared to the Earth. Would microbes know that we're intelligent? It's a different kind of consciousness, I guess. I mean, that's the whole idea of, is it panpsychism, the Gaia theory, where Earth is conscious or something like that. But we could be to the Earth what microbes are to us, I guess. Would that be a non-human intelligence? If we are part of that intelligence, that greater source idea. I don't know, just fucking flying off the handle. Keep going.
I wanted to ask you, like, based on the way Jacques Vallée and Colm Kelleher talk about this, do you think that it's like illegal to acknowledge some of these programs for people? It has to be.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Manhattan Project, think about it.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, I want the public as a thought experiment. Imagine if there was some sort of Manhattan Project going on regarding this topic. Fill in the blank with whatever you'd like. But let's say that there's a big secret being kept. Do you think that they're going to publicly say anything that's going to reveal or compromise that project? Hell no. Not even close. I don't know. I think that's a good starting point for a lot of folks. If they label themselves as skeptics or label themselves as debunkers, is like really good starting point is to acknowledge that like a lot of these things that we've been told from this particular source has been inconsistent and disappointing.
Problem with debunking and coming at it like that is it's really just a way to make yourself feel better. You know what I mean? You're coming into it wanting to prove something to yourself or someone else rather than analyze the data and go where the data leads you. That's my problem. It's an ego-driven thing to come into a scientific, quote unquote, argument with your mind already made up that you're going to arrive at a certain conclusion. That basically forces you to ignore evidence. I don't know why I went on that tangent, but it kind of just occurred to me that it really is an ego thing if you're not going to be receptive to all evidence wherever it leads.
Yeah, and it's also very telling that Dave Grush goes under oath and he's faced all these reprisals and all these different attempts to smear him. And isn't it very funny that Matt Gaetz and Paulina Luna, the two Congress people, they tried to get access to a SCIF and were denied access almost immediately when they tried to get more information about the UAP topic. What does that tell people about this? This is very, very complicated. And I think the people that just try to say that this is some circular reporting are usually, I'm not going to lie, dude, most every single one that has posted something like that has been part of the clown show of people who will look at evidence and look at the testimony of some of these people and they just scoff at it, or they say that, oh, this pilot that's under oath, putting his entire name, credibility, and life on the line trying to talk about this topic. Oh, well, he's just another victim of the circular reporting. Like, screw you. And if that is the case, I hope a lot of these people that are making these little comments on these people who have come forward, I hope they go under oath and they talk about some of the things that they've been exposed to, because I think that, like, people say sunlight is the best disinfectant when it comes to these topics. So, like, I don't know, dude. And it honestly, there's a huge element of, like, does the UAP topic have to do with a lot of sociological and possibly what we've called religious experiences over time? If that's the case, that throws a whole other wrench into this, where we have to think of the belief systems of these people that are making these decisions, because it could very well be just like Ronald Reagan thinking that an angel appeared during the signing of the Declaration of Independence and he was the damn president for 8 years. It could very well be that we have heads in important positions that think in very extreme ways about these topics and have made up their minds, and over my dead body is their response. So, like, I think that a lot of people aren't considering the human element to this, or the element that our government can keep a secret and historically has done a very impressive job of keeping secrets. Somebody made the point that something like 100,000 people have this certain level of security clearance, like saying that there's a whole bunch of stuff that's classified. Why would you get so worked up over this little chunk of things that are classified? Like, tons of people have these classifications.
No, it's compartmented.
Yeah,
that's the whole thing.
It's a stupid straw man argument. So that was why I was just like, in my head, I'm like, I don't want to answer a stupid straw man argument. But at the same time, it's something that is like, I hear people trying to make that distinction, and it's stupid. I find it very stupid. And they're not listening to these people who have come forward and given testimony that is, like, shocking.
There's not much room for nuance when it comes to debunkers. It's either right or wrong. There's no middle ground. So that's the problem. That's a serious problem. They might be part right, and the people who think otherwise might be part right too. So one of the interesting things that was pointed out also by Nick Gold was that these KONA Blue documents were declassified days before the House Oversight UAP hearing. Yeah, so these were declassified on the 18th of July. The House Oversight hearing was on the 26th. And the other weird thing is these documents were due to be declassified in 2036. I'm truly wondering what caused them to declassify these on that day, like days before the House Oversight Committee hearing, as well as if this program would even have been mentioned in the AARO report if these hadn't been declassified until 2036. Would AARO even have brought it up if that was the case? Knowing that these would get out, they kind of preempted it within that report, because they spent a big chunk of that report talking about that program as it was the only program. Part of me feels like they didn't move forward with the program because there's a legacy program in place already. They could blame it on duplication of work. Maybe. I would assume it's just because they don't want to be rooted out.
Today, this being the 17th of April, Representative Luna Burchett and Representative Andy Ogles from Tennessee, they had a skiff briefing about UAP. They told that Matt Laszlo, he's Ascapult, right? Matt Laszlo?
Mm-hmm.
So Matt Laszlo got quotes from Luna who said it was a nothing burger. Burchett said there's no reason that any of this stuff was told in a skiff. And then Ogles said, other than to get us not to talk about it. And before that, Representative Luna says, it's become evident that there's a whole lot of people that don't want us to continue down this path. And so what I will say is that, unfortunately, things have gotten a little derailed with everything in the House currently, but we're still working in a bipartisan fashion to move forward. And so with this skiff meeting, hopefully we'll get some more answers, then hopefully announce our first field hearing. So they are trying to continue and press forward on this, and they see that they're getting the runaround. Like, if they're getting skiff briefings and having to fight tooth and nail to actually get access to that room, and then they're still being fed nothing burgers and facing this obfuscation, I'm quite happy to hear that right now. They're working in a bipartisan way. Like, that is a very encouraging thing to hear.
Representative Garcia said he's requested numerous times from House leadership to start doing more public UFO hearings. He said he's written them. He said he's approached them in person and asked, they want to do this. Like, it's not for lack of trying, I guess, that it seems like things are going slowly, but it seems like they really are trying behind the scenes to get more information out into the public. It's just not really a top priority right now for House leadership. So it doesn't seem like the interest has fallen off. It's just politics. So that's unfortunate, but it's good to know that it's still of interest to these people who are really the only people who can get the public answers at this point.
The thing that I like about it, though, is that these debunker type and skeptic types are so used to being able to have these like quivering, scared political leaders that don't even want to talk about this subject. So it's even easier to obfuscate. Yeah. Now we have political leaders that are saying, fuck this story. This is not what's going on. And we can tell, we can clearly see that something is being covered up right now. What is going on? And why is our money being spent in ways that we're not passing our audits? Like, what is going on right now? And why isn't there congressional oversight?
It seems like things are picking back up. Yeah, it's nice because people aren't just sitting around throwing shit at each other, seeing what sticks, and running with conspiracy theories that are fucking crazy. In this field, there's a lot of conspiratorial thinking. When people try to ignore it, those people just double down on their conspiracies because they think or the person who's trying to avoid it is directing it because they're trying to keep plausible deniability. That's something I see a lot in this community, and it's fucking weird. I think a lot of people have been a victim of that. It's pretty lame and makes people uncomfortable, and it leads to harassment and stuff like that. So let's try to chill out on that. I'll probably cut that out, but I just had to say something.
So I kind of remember what I was trying to say earlier.
Yeah, go for it.
So something that I've been really happy about as it concerns our show specifically is I will see a lot of these people who try to downplay the seriousness of the UFO phenomena, whether it's on the internet or on other podcasts. And I'm noticing that the everyday person, especially the listeners to this podcast, are so armed with knowledge because they're not getting information from us that we're pulling out of our ass. We're telling you the author, and we're encouraging you guys to read, and we're not telling you, hey, join our fucking stupid group and like give us cryptocurrency and like
go listen to it talk about the end of the world for 6 hours.
Exactly. I'm noticing that listeners to our show are elevating the conversation, and they are bringing up sources and where they're getting information and where they're getting testimony from. And it's not from these ridiculous sources as they try to make it seem like. It's from generals and scientists and physicists and authors and world leaders and people who weren't Mormons until they were 23 and decided to make documentaries for the New York Post. Like, these people are serious people.
Charge their employer for the porn they fucking rent in their room. Did you read that article? It's pretty wild. Anyway. God damn, everyone just chill the fuck out. That's my message. So yeah, I repurposed my KLAÜÐ account. I swapped the handles in the middle of the night. So now our podcast has 70,000 followers, which is pretty cool. And my personal account has 18 or something. So it's nice and peaceful. But yeah, you can follow us on Twitter still. It's still me tweeting, and I can't stop for some reason. It's fucking it's gonna be the end of me. But yeah, follow us on Twitter, Patterns Podcast, and join the Patreon if you want to support the show, and join the Discord. And I got to write an article soon. I don't know. Dude, this past few weeks have been brutal. Hopefully, I have one out this weekend. We'll see. You got anything?
I did want to read, if I could, and you can cut it out if you'd like. But I've been really like into the weeds with Arthur C. Clarke.
Oh yeah,
and I wanted
got
to
me a really nice book, fucking Childhood's End. I read the first like 20 pages or so. It's
nice,
wild.
Dude.
Yeah,
nice.
Dude, the part where they fucking where they shoot the missile at the fucking ship that's hovering over the city, and
and they don't even retaliate,
and they don't retaliate, and that's
they just
like
let the humans get nervous.
Yeah, it's like 10 times. That's what I'm trying to do right now. That's
oh goodness, yeah, that book is like nerve-wracking. So this is an exchange, real quick, and we can talk more about Arthur
we'll
C.
talk
Clarke,
about it more.
I wanted to just share this exchange between Stephen Hawking and Arthur C. Clarke. So Stephen Hawking asks, if there are very intelligent beings reasonably near, why have they not visited us? And this is Clarke's response. There are literally dozens of answers to this. They may have come in the remote past. They may be visiting us every 10,000 years. I mean, the universe is a huge place. And even if there are fleets of surveyor ships going all over the cosmos, we shouldn't expect visitors less than, I'd say, every 1,000 years or so. They may know all about us, and they may have put a quarantine around our planet for pretty good reasons. They may be totally uninterested in us. They may be so much higher that we're just beneath their contempt, if you'd like. We could speculate endlessly. I think we should just wait and try to get more evidence. And I agree with Arthur C. Clarke.
Amen. Amen. Whatever you fucking say. That was a good episode. Stay safe out there. Enjoy yourselves and the warm weather. What's happening? I'm really enjoying it. It's a new dude. That was a long winter. Felt like, right? I don't know. Hey, well, you're in fucking Florida, so you don't know shit about
yeah,
it.
dude. I don't know. the leaves are brown all year. And
yeah. All right. It's all. Yeah. You're in the swamp 365. It's what is it? Red algae season or something?
Dude, it's gator season, baby.
Yeah, we got earthquakes. You got gators. But we'll make it through. All right. I'm losing my mind. It's late. But yeah, that's it for this week. And we will see y'all next week. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.